Hey everybody, it's Sonjdradeluxe. Can I go to hell? Yeah! Today we're making Jamaican breakfast. I started in the afternoon, the sun went down, and here we are. Anyways, it's dark out, but delicious any time of day. We've got some boiled dumplings, fried plantain, breadfruit, root vegetables like white yam, and you know, sweet potato yam that you'd find in the grocery store, and ackee and saltfish. So good. If you want to see how to get the plate, not get the look, please stay tuned. Alright, so first up, I'm going to take our salted cod. You want to soak it overnight. If you're like me and you forgot, you can always soak it for as long as you remember, which is I did about an hour, but I'm going to fill a pot with cold water, bring it to a boil with the saltfish in it, and then strain it, rinse it off, and then bring it to a boil again. Next up, I'm going to start with my dumplings. So I was going to do fried dumplings, but I was missing baking powder, so I'm just going to do boiled, but I'm going to start with some all-purpose flour, and I'm just doing everything by eye. You want to cook with your heart, you feel me? So I'm gonna give it a nice sift just to get some air into it and make it fluffy, and then I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of salt, and then I'll hit it with some sugar. Now this is not a sweet thing, but it gives it a little bit more depth of flavor with a little bit of sugar in it. Then I'm gonna add some cold butter. Cold because I don't want it to start forming a dough if it's melted, and I want to get it into little clumps, so I'm just working it through with my finger. Again, I was totally doing this with the intention of making fried dumplings, but I was missing those ingredients, so I just ended up turning it into boiled. So usually I wouldn't put butter in boiled dumplings, but this is what we did, and it ended up tasting really good. So you just want to work it through breaking up the butter so that it kind of breaks apart and the flour will kind of wrap around the little butter pieces that you are mixing in. And I just want to make sure that there's no clumps, but usually like if you're frying it, it will give little air pockets, so it's a little bit more flaky, and you want the texture to kind of be like moist sand when you're finished, so no large clumps of butter and just nice soft sand texture. I'm gonna go in with milk. You don't have to use milk, again, especially for boiled dumplings, but I bought it just for this. You can use unsweetened, unflavored almond milk or cashew milk, or just plain old water. And then I'm just gonna mix it through to see if I need to add more. I'm looking for a certain consistency. I just want the dough to kind of stick together, but I'm just mixing it around with my hand, adding more milk as I need to, and then I will start to knead it. So you want to knead it so that the bowl almost goes clean, adding more moisture when you need to until you get a nice lump of dough, and the bowl will be a little bit clean afterwards. Everything's mixed in nicely, and I'm just gonna set that aside to rest. Going back to my saltfish, the water is boiling, so I'm gonna dump it, rinse it off, fill it up with cold water again, and repeat that process. Next up, I'm gonna start dicing some onions. I like a lot of veg in my ackee and saltfish, so I'm going in with a whole onion. I love onion, and I'm just giving those nice slices. Again, I'm not a chef, so don't be looking at my knife scales. I'm trying my best. And I just want to put those in a bowl on the side once they're all sliced up. Next up, I'm going to start slicing some pepper. I wanted to go for color more than thinking about the quantity. You could probably get away with half of each. I tried to use small peppers because I didn't want too many peppers, which I ended up doing anyways. Either way, it's delicious. Add as much veg as you want. You could also skip this. A lot of people make it without any peppers, but again, I was just trying to add a little bit more veg into the dish. So I'm going to scoop out the seeds and the white part of the inside of the pepper. Just doing that with a smaller knife, removing the stems. Then we're going to move on to slicing it. I find it is easier if you slice it from the inside because it has a little bit more grip. If you don't have a super sharp knife, it can kind of slip around or be a little bit more difficult to slice on the skin side. So I like to go in from the inside, and I'm going to do slices similar to the way that we cut the onions, just nice long strips, and you can make them thinner if you want to. I chose yellow and red peppers because ackee is yellow. The scallions we're using are green, and it's just a really beautiful color combo. So these are a little bit wilted, so I'm just gonna dip them in a little bit of warm water and then right away into an ice bath, and that can kind of revive your veggies and bring back their color and their shape a little bit. It just kind of soaks up all the moisture, and they'll be a little bit more firm for when you want to chop them again. Camera turned off while I was chopping it, but this is the size that you want when you're putting them in. I mean, you could do whatever size you want. That's just what I did. Next up, I'm gonna get some garlic. I'm gonna take the side of my knife and just smush it so that I can can easily remove the skin, and it'll just kind of separate a little bit, peeling out the garlic clove. And I'm gonna give it a nice rough chop in a smaller size. So just rocking my knife back and forth, keeping it together, and then getting another clove of garlic, a few cloves, because I'm like a big garlic fanatic, so that's why I went a little bit extra. I'm just gonna put that on the side, and I'm gonna take one of the stars of the dish. This is Scotch bonnet pepper. My Caribbean supermarket had them frozen, so it's a little bit of a softer texture just from thawing out. I'm just gonna coat my fingers in oil to keep the spice off of my fingers, and I'm going to slice it down the center. I want to scoop out some of the seeds because I don't want it too spicy. It did end up being really spicy because I put the whole pepper in there. You don't have to do that. I'd probably use half without the seeds, or just go based off your spice level, but this is important. It adds such a nice fruitiness, freshness, smells happy, adds a really nice flavor. It's in a lot of Jamaican food as a flavor thing, as well as adding a little bit of heat, but it is so good and really makes a huge difference. And again, this was quite a lot. You don't need that much, but it ended up tasting good anyways. Also got some fresh thyme on the side, and I'm gonna start putting out my tomatoes. These are just some sweet tomatoes. I'm gonna give them a rinse, and I wanna move on to heating up my pot because I'm just about finished cutting all the vegetables. I wanna work on something else. There's a lot of moving parts to this dish, so going in with some neutral oil. I got this canola oil just for this, and you wanna use a little bit more oil than you normally would for sauteing something. There's a lot of things going in here, and the oil kind of thickens the slight bit of sauce that you're gonna get from the tomatoes and the ackee. So I'm gonna start to toast my onions very lightly. I'm not caramelizing them. I still want them to have texture, so I'm putting them on high heat first just to get a little bit of browning. Then I'll turn the heat down so that they can slowly cook without losing their texture. I'm adding just the smallest amount of salt because our saltfish is very salty to the onions to help pull the moisture out, but I'm also going to strain my codfish at this point with the heat on low, and it'll look like this. It's nice and flaky. You want to taste it. Make sure that you get a feel for how salty it is because this will change how you season the dish moving forward. If there's a lot of salt, you might not want to add any salt at all, and for me it tasted perfect, so I just broke it up a little bit into bigger chunks. Again, I like it in bigger chunks because when you stir it, it will break apart a little bit, so you want to leave it bigger so it has a chance to still have texture when you stir it and it starts to get smaller. I'm going to go ahead and saute my peppers. Again, not cooking them down too much because this is going to add really nice texture and freshness, and ackee and tomatoes are very soft in texture, so I want to leave those vegetables a little bit on the cook side, so very low heat. Or I'm going to start to chop my tomatoes, and I'm just doing little slices there just so that they don't totally lose their shape. They'll get nice and warm and add some more freshness. The seeds will melt in and create a little bit of a sauce, but I'm going to add whole allspice or pimento berries after giving it a nice little stir. I'm just going to drop those in and then toast those along with our vegetables. Give it another nice little stir. This is on medium low heat. Alright, and now that it's sauteed at a really nice softness and it's on lower heat, I'm going to add my garlic, my Scotch bonnet, which again was a little bit too much, and the green onion or scallion, and then our fresh thyme. I'm going to give that a nice little stir. Again, I would have put the codfish in with the onions, but I'm still getting used to trying to cook on camera, so I just realized I didn't put it in, so I'm going to add that in now. I like to toast this a little bit as well, but luckily I found out soon enough to not ruin it. I'm gonna add some black cracked pepper and give that a nice stir, and I'm gonna get into the ackee. So this is a fruit grown in Jamaica. Just like an avocado, it is a fruit that is mainly eaten savory, or that is eaten savory rather than sweet. It's a very creamy, buttery texture. I have it canned. Obviously, ackee doesn't grow here in Canada, but it's not too different when you use it canned. It's a lot less work. Preparing ackee is a very tedious job, but I'm just gonna strain it and then give it a bit of a rinse, being very gentle and delicate with it. The fruit almost looks like eggs, or scrambled eggs, but I'm gonna add my tomatoes and my ackee in at the same time because they require the least amount of cooking. So I put my tomatoes in. I'm just gonna open up a little space for the ackee, and I'm gonna be super gentle and just fold it in. But as you can see, it's kind of a creamy texture, so it will break apart. So trying to stir it as little as possible. And we want to give it very gentle folds in, almost like if you were making like a meringue or something, you need to fold egg whites. I don't make desserts, but that's just what I can relate it to. Super gentle. Don't want it to turn into mush. We worked hard at preserving the texture of the peppers already and all the other veg, so we just want to fold it in so all the flavors are in there and our saltfish isn't breaking apart too much. This is what it looks like up close. We want to kind of maintain those little shapes there, and it smells so good. Oh, I don't have a lot of counter space or oven space, so I'm going to put that to the side. Now this is a breadfruit. When I bought it, it was green and it was really cold, and I asked them, I'm like, is this frozen? He's like, no, it was just in the fridge. So I said, okay, I kept it in my fridge. Now it's gone a little bit brown, so I want to cut it open and see if it's okay to eat. And I've actually never made it before, but this is what the inside of a breadfruit looks like. It looks good to go. It's like the mixture of bread and a potato, kind of has the same starchiness as root vegetables, but it is so good when you fry it. It's just delicious, but it's got that starchiness that can be a little bit sticky. So even though I have a really sharp knife, it is sticking to the knife a little bit, and it's not sticky as in sweet, it's sticky as in starchy. So I'm gonna go ahead and peel that, and I realized a potato peeler was much easier to get that peeled, and I just made enough for myself because I think fresh fried breadfruit is the best. I've got this plantain. Now this is ripe. You want it to look almost black. Now this is probably just a little tiny bit too black, but again, I had it in my fridge so it went a little darker. I'm gonna give that a peel. Plantain is great even when it's green. You could boil it, or you can slice it really thin and fry it to make plantain chips, but this is how I'm gonna do it. I'm cutting it thick and I'm frying it, and it's a beautiful sweet side dish. It is so good, much more firm and starchy than a banana. It's a little sticky, but I'm cutting it on an angle and about a centimeter or so thick. We're gonna fry that up and it's gonna be gorgeous. I'm gonna try and cut the breadfruit similar-ish in thickness. Obviously it's a different shape, so it's hard to get that same thickness, but just in slivers like that. And then I'm gonna start working on this big old white yam. It looks almost like tree bark. They're very heavy. They're more crisp. They're not sweet like a yam you'd find in your grocery store, a sweet potato. They're definitely, or more like potato, I guess, but they're quite starchy, slippery, and then when you cook them down, they really hold their shape quite well. They're more firm. I also have got this yellow or orange yam or sweet potato that I'm just gonna cut with the skin on. The skin will come off really easily when you boil it. I'm gonna throw that into a pot. White yam in a similar kind of size. This is obviously way bigger, but I'm gonna cut them all in big chunks. Same with a yellow potato. I'm just gonna cut that. I mean, I didn't need to do this. I just realized how much root vegetable this is, but again, I cook to give it away. So I'm gonna fill that with water and a little bit of salt and bring it to a boil. And this is where I realized that I was gonna make boiled dumplings instead. And so I'm just gonna knead it a little bit more, and I'm gonna section it off into 8s, trying to make it even-ish. So they'll cook at the same time, but I'm just kind of slicing it into 8s. And then with this one, I'm just gonna make little discs. I feel like when you're making it as a side dish, it's nice to have it in this shape. If you're putting it in stews or soups, you can make it into a spinner, which is almost like a stretched out football with pinched ends. I'm going to start to heat up my pan with some oil, and I'm gonna throw in my plantains first because they're a little thicker and they take a tiny bit more time to cook. And you wanna keep it on like medium heat or lower because you don't wanna burn it. The sugars in it will burn, so you don't wanna burn it before it's cooked all the way through. So I'm just putting it on a lower heat. Then I'll add the breadfruit because they will take a lot quicker to cook because they're thinner. They don't have that same sugar content. So I'm gonna let those sit for a little bit, and I'm gonna give them a little tip once they start to brown. If they're going a little bit more on the black side before they're cooked, just give them a flip over. It's good to have that bit of black color on there, but I wanna make sure it's cooked all the way through. So I'll flip them back over again. I'm gonna put our dumplings in some salted water because my other pot was a little full and preoccupied at this point. I'm gonna give my breadfruit a little flip over when it's a little bit golden and toasted. And this is what I mean when you get that beautiful caramelized color on your plantain. I'm flipping it over again just so I know it's cooked all the way through. Turning down the heat if it is going a little bit too high, but our breadfruit is cooked, so I'm pulling it out and I'm putting it on some paper towel in a bowl just can crisp up. If you let it sit in its oil, it can get a little bit of sogginess. Then I'm gonna hit it with a little bit of kosher salt while it's still kind of wet. Same thing, plantain's ready. I'm gonna take that out and put that in a paper towel as well so the ends remain very crispy, and again hit it with a little salt. Doing a little fork test to see how my root veggies are doing, and they are cooked, so I'm mad freaking excited. Gonna get into these dumplings and they're looking ready as well. Put my Ackee back on my tiny stove and just to heat it a little bit, and we can start plating, fam. So this is our beautiful Ackee and saltfish. I'm so excited. I'm gonna start to plate that up. I want to put one of everything on this plate. It was a very big plate. Like, I just wanted to show you all the stuff that we cook. So I've got some white yam on there, stir potato, couple of those dumplings. Usually I wouldn't put butter in boiled ones, but it did taste really good. Couple breadfruit and our plantain. And there we go, Jamaican breakfast. Damn! So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Definitely ease up on the Scotch bonnet. I was a little too generous with it, I think, because I don't get it that much. I was really excited to use it, but it's so good. So good. I love the flavor of Scotch bonnet. I'd probably just use a little bit less of the seeds. It's pretty spicy. White yam. Oh my god. I haven't had so many of these things in so long, and that's a cool thing about like quarantine, I guess, is that you want to learn how to make this stuff that you love, that you might get from your family that you can't visit right now, for yourself. So I've really taken time to learn these things. Fried plantain, caramelized, sweet, delicious breadfruit. Haven't had this in years, so I was really shocked and excited to see this when I went to my Caribbean supermarket. So good, crispy, delicious. It just reminds me of my family that are in Toronto and Jamaica that I miss very much, that I can't visit right now. Dumpling, so good. I'm in heaven right now. I'm gonna eat this. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you wanna see more cooking videos, let me know. I've been experimenting a lot more. Don't forget to share, subscribe, follow, stay pretty, love yourself, and I'll see you guys again in the next video. Take care.